For the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world, we are live and amplified. So let's get ready to podcast.
Fire it up.
Welcome, everybody, to another Live and Amplified Livecast. I'm your host, Tom Quiet, and we are coming at you live. We have a very special guest. It is Ben Peverall. How's it going today, Ben?
It's good, man. How about yourself?
It's going pretty good. It's been a busy weekend, but that's just the way I like it.
Yeah, same here. I've literally been on the go nonstop all day today, which is unusual for a Sunday, but It's feels good.
Nice.
It's good.
And you're based out of Nashville, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. And you're from Wilmington, North Carolina.
I am. Yeah, I grew up there and been here for going on 5 years.
Oh, wow. And how's the Nashville music scene been treating you?
It's good, man. Nashville is it's a unique place because there's it's known for its country scene, but there's a lot of underground entertainment, a lot of underground music and art and stuff, and that is kind of the growth I've seen, even in just the 5 years I've been here. It's an ongoing thing, and I think there's a lot to be a part of, which is really cool.
Wonderful. And how did you get to Nashville? Did you just pick up and move, or did you have a reason to move there? Or
yeah, it was kind of weird, actually. Definitely the most spontaneous thing I've ever done. Back in it would have been 2015. I had a friend that was coming out here, and I had never been here before. And I had he told me he was going out there and that they had an extra seat or whatever. And I knew like one person here, and I hit her up, and she found me a place to stay. And so I crashed. I literally got into Nashville on like a Friday night, and then we left. Well, Friday night, actually, it was technically Saturday. It was like 12 a.m. We hung out all day Saturday and ventured around town. And then we left Sunday, which is about a 10-hour drive back to North Carolina. So it was really, really quick. And then I texted my family on the way back, and I was like, hey, I'm moving for sure, 100%. Right. And there was like maybe 2 months that went by, and then I got a job, and I was out in like 5 days once I got the call. So It went by pretty quick.
And are you still working at that job, or are you a full-time musician at this point?
I've had a couple different jobs since then, and I'm not a full-time musician currently. I do work full-time, and then music is obviously the priority and stuff like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And your stage name is Peverall, which is a band, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then do you also do like solo stuff?
I did a little bit of solo stuff. I don't really do it much right now. Initially we were playing as like Ben Peverall, it just as like an artist thing, since it's a really common thing to do here. But I think that I just kind of wanted to make it more of an inclusive band feel, and we all agreed that my last name was weird enough to be a band name. so we ended up keeping it. Yeah.
Nice. Does it mean anything? Like, does your last name, like from wherever your family is from, does it mean anything? Or
as far as a significant meaning goes, I have no idea what it translates to or what it means or what, okay. But I know that it's an English name. I think it's originally from like Wales, in that area somewhere, but no, it's just a name I ended up with.
Okay. I didn't know if you knew like what the translation would be, but if it's from Yeah.
I don't actually. Yeah, I have no idea. Wales, something like that, somewhere in England or in the UK.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so what's been the best experience you've had since you've moved out to Nashville?
Best experience, musically?
Yeah, musically.
Man, I mean, I will say, like, just this last month has been really, really cool. Like, recording the record was great. There was a lot of complications with it because it got extended for a whole book of reasons and things against my own control, which was annoying. But, you know, the record finally got wrapped up and we were happy with it. And then obviously you got to learn how to build the product itself. So with this past February was really good, just having that release and the releasing the single and then doing the show, and the turnout was good, and the whole just month, I don't know, was just altogether really, really good. So I think I would just say the release of the record, to generalize all that, was probably one of the best experiences I've had, for sure, in a humble way.
Nice. What was the for when you got the idea of releasing this record, did you have a bunch of songs already pre-written, or did you write specifically for this album?
You mean prior to the recording of it?
Yeah, prior to the recording of it.
We wrote the record and then we recorded it. So like I had maybe a couple songs and a couple demos laying around, and we used maybe like one or two of those.
Okay.
And then once the band, there's 6 of us technically, and once we all kind of like got together and started discovering what the sound was going to be of this, we started writing the rest of the record, and then, you know, obviously jumped into recording it when it was time. But there was a lot of time of writing and playing shows and that kind of stuff before we decided to actually find a studio and start doing it.
And is this the first album you've released?
Yeah, this is the debut.
Okay.
We had a couple singles out, and then this is the first record.
Awesome. Never done like an EP, just a couple singles and then the album?
Yeah, we considered an EP, but I think I write conceptually, I think potentially is the word to use for this. I write with like the intention of just a bigger like product. And I think an EP would have felt just like it wasn't fully there, and there was more to be completed. And so when we decided that we wanted to do a full album and just go straight for that, you know?
Oh yeah. Understood completely.
Yeah.
What's kind of your creative process like when you sit down to write music?
It's primarily the same thing every time. Sometimes the ideas have a different genesis, but like for the most part, my creative process is starting with a melody or a lyric. And then I have a rehearsal space in my basement. And I just usually go down there and start kind of building the product. I mainly write on my own. I write probably better on my own than I do with a group, at least in this season of life. And then I kind of pitch it to the band and we build it from there, whether it's a full song or just an idea.
Gotcha. So you're mainly the writer in the band and they just kind of help you fill in certain areas?
Yeah, they've been writing a lot more we recorded the album and finished the actual recording process of it probably like May or June of 2019. And so we had all this time of complication and mixing and mastering and all that. And so in between then we were still playing shows and writing more content. So since the actual album, it being finished, we've written several songs collectively as a band, and we're still writing. So it's kind of like that material, I think, has included the other members a lot more probably than the record did.
Gotcha.
They were all completely with a hand. They all had a hand in it. But I think the draft of the songs on that album was primarily probably everything I started for myself.
Gotcha. So we can assume that there will be a second album shortly behind the first?
I hope so. I mean, I kind of, Nashville's a learning experience. It's like everyone's trying to do the same thing and everyone's journey is not going to look the same. Mm-hmm. But there's certain things that you have to do the same way, which I would say is just learning how to promote a record, how to push it around and be a band and that kind of thing and play shows and all that. So I have absolutely no idea when it'll be time to do a second record, but I do know we'll have plenty of content for it. We're several songs deep after the finishing of all those songs.
Nice. That's always good to have a good grasp, or at least have the intuition to know, like, hey, it's time for us to release new music.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we're going to try and get into the studio and do a single in the coming weeks to months, just because we want to keep pushing some of the content. On the album, there's 6 of us, and we want to do a song with the strings kind of, Scott, our cellist, moved to North Carolina, and Lauren, our violinist, is in Seattle, and they'll come back and play with us like they did for the release show and stuff like that. But the other 4 of us are like the rock band or whatever you want to call it, and we've been doing a lot of writing collectively as just a indie rock band. So we want to get into the studio and release a single with the 4 of us, just to kind of familiarize ourselves with that and stuff like that. That's
cool. So it's mainly a 4-piece with 2 other pieces that'll come in if it's a big enough show, or
yeah. So they're 100% a part of this group, 100% in the band, 100% we're on the record and the writing. Yeah. It's just that they don't live directly in Nashville. So that can, it's got to be prearranged to get it all worked and stuff. Right. But we did just get the arrangements written out. And that allows us to bring in actual people from Nashville. And there's another violinist I've been talking to that's probably going to start working with us too.
Cool.
Yeah.
And do you go back to North Carolina at all?
I try to, yeah. I go back probably a couple times a year.
Nice. Because you still got family and stuff there?
I do, yeah. My family's huge, man. It's grown a lot over the last couple of years, but there's a bunch of them in North Carolina and then some in Virginia as well.
Oh, wow. Do you get to tour out often, or do you pretty much just primarily play the local Nashville scene?
We haven't done too much touring just yet. We've been talking about that in the last week or so, because we started writing the record 2 years ago and have been playing. So it's kind of relatively early in just the place of life that we're in. We want to make sure that we're giving enough appropriate shows to Nashville and developing ourselves in the place we're going to call home before we start jumping into all that. But we're working in that direction, and I've been actually talking to some people out of town and all that. So
trying to get some, at least dip your toes into playing outside of Nashville, if
for
possible.
Sure. Yeah, for sure. It's definitely going to happen. It was just more like, let's spend some time here and build the following, to put in a cheesy way.
Let's make sure we don't jeopardize what we currently have, but make sure we're still growing, because if you're not growing, you're dying.
Definitely. And I think Nashville, this is kind of what I was saying a minute ago about everyone's journey looks different. And one of those aspects would be I think a lot of bands immediately start traveling out of town, which is great and which is needed. But if you don't have a healthy presence within your own town, it can be a little bit damaging to the path you're taking. So it's really important, in my opinion, to just make sure that you're given enough shows and time to the actual place you're going to call your hometown, or where your band's from. Yeah,
exactly. Because a healthy local support will make you look good in any other town you go to. If you book, let's say, for instance, you book a show in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and they see you have all these fans in Nashville, they'll be like, okay, well, they're obviously decent. Let's give them it a shot. And,
Yeah, definitely.
So, what got you into music?
Oh gosh. I've been playing music since I was a kid, like a boy. I developed a fascination when I was probably 4 years old. As far as drums go, I played a little bit at at my church at the time. And then as I got older, I continued to play drums, and I don't play so much drums anymore, but I got into songwriting when I was around 10 years old, and guitar and piano and all that stuff. So since then I've kind of that's been my primary.
Was there anybody in particular that introduced you to music?
Like a band or like an influence?
Yeah, like an influence, or like a personal influence, like somebody in the family, or was it
probably not? Man, I wish. I don't know. My family is not super musical. My brother was a little bit. My dad was a singer, but I don't really know where it kind of came from, to be honest.
Okay.
There's been plenty of bands that have influenced my music. Absolutely. But as far as like the beginning of my musical path and career, I don't think I could really nail down one specific thing, you know?
Gotcha. Who are some of the bands that kind of inspired you?
Growing up, I listened to a lot of like more hardcore, post-hardcore screamo stuff, which is funny because like I don't play that music at all. I grew up listening to bands like a band called Under Oath, what else did I listen to? Emery. I got into more like rock and alternative independent and stuff like that later on in life, whatever. But some of the earlier influences would have been stuff within that like post-hardcore genre.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when you're not playing music or not at work, what do you do for fun? What's kind of your relaxation thing that you do?
Man, I'm one of those guys that's still playing Halo 2. No, that's not like what I always do, but I definitely will hop on and play some Xbox every once in a while. But I actually spend a good amount of time trying to be outside the house. I work from home, and so sometimes I can get a little stir crazy, and I go for walks or drives or something, a good bit. There's a lot of parks in Nashville. It's just kind of a scenic place. So I try and get out a good bit. I like to try bars and good drinks and stuff like that. I appreciate a good cocktail. So there's a bunch of those places here.
Yeah. But obviously you're not going down to the main strip there, because last time I was in town, we tried to go visit for an hour, and it was like, and it cost me $20 just to park. And I'm like,
yep.
Yeah, not going to do that.
I mean, Lyft and Uber is definitely a lifesaver in this town, but I don't personally. Broadway, that whole strip, Broadway, Second Avenue, all that stuff downtown is not my first preference. And the thing is, like, most of the time you'll meet locals here that would probably agree with that. It's such a touristy spot, and I'll go down there and tolerate it generally when someone from out of town wants to go, or the one-offs where I do end up there. But Broadway is never my like, oh man, I'm feeling it. Yeah.
Understood. The only reason we went down there is because I wanted to go to the blues club.
BB King's?
Yeah.
Dude, that place is awesome.
And it was just like, man, I'm not going to pay $15, $20, whatever it was, to park for an hour.
Right.
So, it just wasn't going to happen.
Where are you from, or where are you currently?
I'm currently in Waco, Texas.
Okay.
But I grew up in Chicago. It's like I was born on the north side, grew up on the south side. Nice. And then after college, I actually lived in Bowling Green, Kentucky for about a year.
All right.
And so that's how I initially got introduced to a lot of the Nashville music scene.
Yeah.
Because where I was working at, we did a little bit of work with with like CMT and the Country Music Awards and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I got to meet like a lot of independent acts that were on the cusp of getting signed. And so that was my initial introduction to Nashville.
Totally.
And then about 2 years ago, I think is probably about when you and I met the first time that I went up there, and started doing the live sessions there. And then from there, it was just kind of like, okay, Nashville is a place where I need to try and get to at least once every other year, if not once a year.
Yeah, I would love to do one of those whenever you guys are back in town. They look good, man. I've been looking at them.
I appreciate it. Now that we found a place that's not an Airbnb, I feel a lot better about coming to Nashville to do them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the first time I came there, it was an Airbnb. And I was like, I mean, it's fine for now because I don't know any better. And then when I was trying to plan my second trip, they had just I'd just seen an article that like the city of Nashville was really starting to button down on home studios.
Mm-hmm.
And
they are.
Yeah, and so I saw that and I was like, well, I don't want to get the Airbnb, the people I was working with at Airbnb, I don't want to get them in trouble. So Airbnb is no longer an option.
Yeah.
And so now that I found this studio out there, or sound studio, they're really affordable and easy to work with. So I think we'll be able to make more trips out that way. So I'm excited.
Definitely, man. Yeah. Y'all let me know when you're in town again. I mean, I'm sure I'll see you post about it, but I'm happy to do those videos or whatnot.
Yeah, for sure. What's one thing that people that are looking to move to Nashville that people need to know before they make the commitment to move?
Man, I would say, and this is even something that I have to remind myself of. So I absolutely do not have it all figured out by any means when I say this, but there's a very, very easy mindset to get into when you move to Nashville. And that is that, it's just the I'm going to make it mindset. Mm-hmm. And it's not that that's a bad mindset to have, because dreaming big is a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. But it is, in Nashville, it's super easy to get discouraged because there's so many people doing the same thing. There's so many people pursuing music, and that's awesome. But because there's so many, it can get a little, it can be damaging to self-esteem and your pursuit overall. And I think that there's a lot of great people that give up. And I would say that if I had, in this moment, if you're listening, or if I have the chance to tell someone that's considering moving to Nashville, I would say, first off, humble yourself. But mm-hmm. Second off, that it is 100% okay if it doesn't happen in the time frame that you're expecting, and that like everyone's journey is going to look completely different. Exactly. And that is okay. And there's ways to enjoy this city and also pursue that.
Yeah. And I've definitely seen it where people can make it work, where they live outside of Nashville, but come to Nashville once every other month for a couple of days, and they still make their career journey work. Mm-hmm. You don't have to live in Nashville to work out of Nashville, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
absolutely.
But if you can make it work where you're in Nashville all the time, that's a good step as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that like kind of like you, for example, like working outside of Nashville, completely involved in its scene, but not living anywhere near it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and don't get me wrong, the initial idea was that I was going to move to Nashville. Mm-hmm. It was a situation that didn't work out. And as time grew, it was like, well, I don't necessarily need to live in Nashville to be involved in the scene. Like, Nashville, I think we figured, is like 11 hours from me.
It's a bit of a hike.
It's a bit of a drive, but I mean, if I have a Friday and a Monday off, I could easily make that trip. Like, it's not a hard trip to make. It's, mm-hmm. So like, if like anything else with a little bit of pre-planning and a three or 4 day weekend, I could make that trip work, Whereas when I was living in Tallahassee, it was a little bit closer, but my work schedule wasn't as flexible. So
yeah, absolutely.
But so one thing we really like doing at Live and Amplified is we've kind of been talking about this a little bit, and you've been doing a really good job at kind of pushing the conversation this way. Mm-hmm. But we're trying to help cultivate younger musicians and make sure they have a firm grasp of what they're signing up for. And not any of these preconceived notions that if they pick up the guitar, they're going to make millions of dollars, because yes, those things happen, but not always. So we really want to try and bring value to the younger musicians that are just getting into it. We want to inspire them, but we also want to make sure that they have a well-balanced perspective, if you will.
Yeah.
So what I want to ask you is, what advice do you have for younger musicians? You've already kind of touched on this, but I figured I'd just ask this question this way.
Yeah. I mean, like, from a musician and a, like, playing and ability standpoint, I mean, I, of course, am always going to need to practice, and I'm absolutely not an amazing guitarist or anything like that. I spend the majority of my time writing. And so I would say, if I'm speaking to someone that enjoys the writing process, the creative process, and they feel like they're super passionate behind that and they're just getting into it, maybe they're a younger writer or something like that. I think, learn, how do I say this? Learn what is your thing, your style, your type of writing, but don't be afraid to step outside of that and push the limits a little bit. Don't be afraid to try something new, see if it works, play it for some people. Feedback is good. Understand that constructive criticism is a good thing, within the right context, within the right person, because you don't want some D-bag just coming up to you and ripping you apart. But like, in Nashville specifically, you have to be okay with musicians 10 times better than you telling you that, but also them being like, you have something good, you just need to work on it, and there's always going to be room for improvement. So I would probably say that, like, work on your craft and push the limits a little bit, and just be receptive to what people have to say about it, and take that and apply it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I would say, to kind of piggyback off of that one a little bit, learn how to let certain comments go. Like you had mentioned about, like, a D-bag coming up and just ripping you a new one, because that's going to happen. Like, there's going to be somebody out there that thinks they're better than everyone else and that their opinion matters, and they're just going to rip you a new one because you went over on a set, or you hit a flat note, or you were slightly out of tune.
Right.
Just learn how to take what they're saying, find the nugget of truth that's in it, but ultimately just kind of let it pass.
Yeah, I think there's a way to just hear, receive, and if there's value in it, and if you think that they're saying something that actually is applicable to your situation or whatever, then that's good. Like, take that and run with it. But also learn. I think, like, especially in Nashville, you kind of do have to learn how to respectfully take opinion and know how to kindly disagree with it, and just be a normal human being about it. That's super common in this town, and I don't think it's a super easy thing to grasp, because I think as human beings, our natural but our natural reactions to disagreement is to defend ourselves. And that's important, but it's also important to know when to shut someone's opinion out, because there's a lot of opinions in this town.
And you also need to learn how to differ fact from opinion.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
If they're saying, "Oh, I don't like that chord progression," well, that's their opinion. But if they say, "Oh, hey, that note was flat," that's probably a fact.
Yeah.
So you just need to learn how to differ fact from opinion, and then move on from it, and
absolutely
define who you are, who you're going to be, or let it ruin your night or anything of that nature.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
The best piece of advice I've ever received. Oh man. Man, I might have to think on that one.
And if you want, we can move on and let you marinate on that one.
I don't know. That's the best piece of advice I've ever received. Yeah, let me think on that one.
Okay, not a problem.
Let me think on that one.
Yeah, not a problem. So how is your band challenged you to be a better musician?
Dude, they challenge me all the time because we're all such different musicians.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I love writing, and like working with them pushes me because I'm spitting things off of them and they're saying yes or no, or they're saying like, let's try it a different way. And that's important because like, and I think it did start off this way a little bit where I was making the majority of the calls, and I don't ever want to be that musician in a writing situation where, you know, my way is the highway by any means. And they have pushed me in a way to, like I said a minute ago, just kind of step outside the bounds a little bit, push the limits, especially working with the string players. Like, I'm not sure how much you know about strings or whatnot, but it is a very, very technical instrument.
Yep.
Because it's, there's a lot of reasons, but like obviously comparing it to a guitar player, there's no frets. All the tuning is relative. And so pitch and just nailing things like that is like super important and so easily messed up. And so working with a string player who has like 10 times the musical composition knowledge than I do, was really good because like I got to see how, strings and can step on the toes of like the male vocal, specifically the cello. Yeah. Cello steps on the male vocal a lot, and we had to learn how to arrange music in a rock band setting and like make sure no one's, like I said, stepping on each other's toes. And it sounds, I don't know, maybe easy. Maybe it is easy in some ways to other bands, but I think it did take a little bit of work because we were all 6 strangers. No one really knew each other, and in my biased opinion, I think we've done pretty well. But yeah.
No, I mean there definitely had to be a learning curve because I mean you guys were like a rock band and you're incorporating these classical instruments into, I don't want to say a foreign territory because it's been done before, but it's not a widely done thing that everybody's incorporating violin and cello into their rock performance.
Yeah, it is. That's the thing is like, it's not that it hasn't been done, but it's like, it's especially in a live setting, that's the hard part because guitars and bass and drums, they project on a much higher level than a string. And like a classical instrument, like a violin, viola, or cello, when you bring in electronics with them, unless you're using really, really nice gear and they're backed behind like a whole symphony or maybe a quartet or something, even like in our setting, in our situation where we're playing these venues designed for electronic and rock music, you lose a lot of the natural tone of the instrument just by default of what it is, you know, and learning how to balance them with volume is definitely a difficult thing. That's something something we're always going to have to be learning. But yeah, I think it's not that it shouldn't be done. It's just a dangerous route, I think, sometimes for what you're doing.
Exactly. And you were obviously playing music when you were living in Wilmington. How is your music change, or how has your music progressed since leaving Wilmington?
I think it's gotten better. I mean, Nashville's made me grow as a musician. Absolutely.
Has your style changed at all? Were you doing
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, I was So I actually started as well. No, I shouldn't say I started. I definitely didn't start as a worship leader. I wrote normal songs, whatever 10-year-olds write about the difficulty of leaving elementary school or something like that. I don't know. but I did get into worship music for a couple of years, and I did that. But even while I was doing that, I was working on my own and writing songs that weren't considered worship or whatever on the outside. And then I played with a band for a little while right out of high school going into college. And then I moved to Nashville like that same year.
Okay.
So, yeah. Go ahead.
Did you end up going, or did you go to college, or did you move to Nashville right after high school?
I took some time off.
Okay.
And then I went for like a semester, and then I dropped out and moved to Nashville. Okay. I wasn't like huge. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. The program I was in was just a normal Associate of Arts program, and I was just going to transfer to a 4-year university.
And hopefully you'd have it figured out by the time you had transferred.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I was at a community college, and it was just kind of like, I don't know if I really want to do this. And I always knew I wanted to do music. So I think I just decided not to stay in school, and that's definitely one of the best decisions I've ever made, to be humbly honest. I am really happy that I didn't stay in school.
Nice. Well, because that's another thing is school's not for everyone. Like,
it's not. Yeah, it's definitely not.
You get this preconceived notion that everybody's got to go to college if they want to be successful in life, and it's like, nah, do you really though?
Yeah,
like,
it has its purpose for the right situation and the right profession and career you're choosing, but it can also just be a money hole for the wrong situation.
Yep. Because I mean, I'm a firm believer. I take 4 years of experience over a 4-year education. Like, if you're, let's say, for instance, you want to be in the TV industry, because that's just what I know, because that's what I do. So I'd rather have somebody that coming out of high school, they took a production assistant job getting whoever's coffee for 4 years than a kid that's coming fresh out of college. But that's just me. And like, I mean, that's the weird divide we're in nowadays, because you got a lot of the old school mentality, a lot of the higher ups that are still under the old school mentality of the importance of a 4-year degree and all that stuff. And then now you got all these new guys coming in that want the experience over the education.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of that has to do with like, and this isn't to say that, again, that doesn't have its purpose, but I think college, it's so expensive. It's really expensive. And if you don't know what you want to do, in my own opinion, this is potentially going to make some people mad, hopefully not, but I don't think it's worth doing if you're not really sure. Sometimes even at a community college, just because you're going to put yourself in debt and you could still potentially change your major multiple times within that experience. And that's just my opinion, but it definitely served its purpose. Absolutely. It's not like a doctor can just be like, "Hey, I'm going to skip."
That's one thing that definitely people need to understand. It definitely has its purpose. Like, if you want to be a doctor, a lawyer, you definitely have to go to school. Like, there's no way around it. But if when I was going through college and all that stuff, there was so many people, myself included, that went to college for 7-8 years, and most of them came out with a general education or a community studies, where it was like, oh, they basically just took enough classes to graduate. They didn't really major in anything, you know? And it's like, well, what does that really get you? Like, I screwed around for 7 years, and I happened to get myself to a point where I could graduate because I had enough credits.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't help. And then most people, they go to college and get a degree in history, or they get a degree in something, and then they go into business for themselves. It's just like, no, it's not for everybody anymore. College isn't what it used to be.
Yeah, it's definitely not. It's changed a ton for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, as you're kind of moving forward with the album that you just released and recording new singles, what's the future hold for you? Where do you see your music career for yourself going? Where do you see the band going?
I mean, we're gonna keep doing what we're doing, in the pursuit of becoming, a well-known band like everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know exactly what that will look like. I personally want to work outside of my band a good bit. It's just kind of a relatively new development, so I guess it's okay to talk about. But I want to work with other artists, and because I love writing, man. I love to write music, and I want to be able to work with other people and for their projects and give them feedback and be like, just spit ideas. And so I don't know entirely what that'll look like for me. I do know I have a couple writing sessions coming up in April, which I'm excited about. And the band will continue, as far as I know, making music and hopefully traveling soon. And that whole ordeal,
The band will always be there for you. That's good.
Yeah.
Being in Nashville, I've just recently started putting little bits of information together and stuff, and I just recently found out how big of a deal playing at the Bluebird Cafe is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you had an opportunity to play there, or is that an aspiration for you?
It hasn't been much of an aspiration, to be honest. I mean, the Bluebirds, it has a big reputation behind it. Mm-hmm. I think from what I understand, it's primarily country and singer-songwriter stuff. Mm-hmm. Not to say they don't do other stuff, because I'm sure they do, but I haven't really tried. Maybe one day, but I haven't really made much of an effort.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, understood. You mentioned earlier that you're not really into the touristy part of Nashville.
Yeah.
What's a hidden gem in Nashville? Like, if somebody's coming to Nashville and it's like, I want to see what true Nashville is like, what's a hidden gem?
Ooh.
That only people that live in Nashville or are from Nashville would know?
That's a big question. Because the way I describe it to people is split up into sections. Mm-hmm. Like, you have Nashville in the center, then you've got Franklin, you've got Bellevue, you've got East Nashville, you've got Belmead and all these different areas. And they all have their own little strips of bars and restaurants. And a hidden gem in Nashville.
Or someplace like the locals go to,
Yeah. Locals. I'm gonna be so generic and use this one, but
okay.
It's not the best pizza in the world, but it's very good pizza, and it's they've always got good beers on draft. The staff is really friendly. It's 5 Points Pizza.
Okay.
That's over in East Nashville, and there's several strips of bars and restaurants right there that are primarily locals only, not in a restricted way, just I don't know, it doesn't feel touristy at all.
Gotcha.
There's literally 10 places right there, and a couple of restaurants. There's a place on the corner called Marché that would be more of a locally place, and it's an amazing breakfast place.
Cool. Yeah, it's I was just curious because last time I went to Nashville, we ended up doing the session, and then we went to the Grand Ole Opry, and that was about the extent of our Nashville trip after the going down the main strip there kind of failed. And so we were trying to find good places to eat, and every time we went to go talk to the people at the hotel, they kept trying to send us to very touristy places. They were like, oh, we got this or that. We got Dave and Buster's. And it's like...
Dave and Buster's? That's what someone recommended?
Yeah, I was like... I grew up in Chicago. We had Dave and Buster's there. It's like... That's not what I'm asking about.
Yeah.
And then finally we just kind of gave in, and it's like, all right, it's 9:30 at night. We're all dying, and we're going to go just whatever we find first. You know, and so it's just one of those things. It was very funny to me when he brought up Dave and Buster's, like it was something that Nashville like something that they exclusively had, and I'm like, oh boy, okay, that's cool.
That's amazing. Oh man, that's great.
Yeah. I was like, at least you could have said, like, I don't even know if you guys have a Planet Hollywood, but at least Planet Hollywood would have been like, oh, okay, that's not something every place has, you know.
Dave and Buster's.
Yeah,
it's great. Hey man, Dave and Buster. I've been there like once.
Yeah.
I think it was a good time from what I remember, but it was several years ago.
Sounds
but
like
yeah,
every trip to Dave and Buster's.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's funny.
Absolutely.
What's one thing that we'll kind of jump into this, not to try and make it dark or anything.
You're good.
But one thing that's really started to become very prominent in Live and Amplified, and we're trying to shine a light on, is mental health. Because I don't think people talk about it enough, and I think there's still that stigma, especially there's still that stigma of, oh, you can't talk about it because it shows weakness and you can't be weak, you know? So how is how do you deal with your mental well-being? Is it something you struggle with?
Yeah, I'm no, man, I'm glad you asked. The mental health is actually something super close to my heart. This record, just to be like super transparent with you, was inspired by one of my best friends killing himself in 2017. And that was an eye-opening experience, still is an eye-opening experience, just to the importance, because to my eyes and all of my friends' eyes and his dad and brothers, like, his life did not look like a place where someone would make that decision, to be fully honest. His life, it looked good. It looked really good. And that none of us were aware that anything was really going on. And I have always been surrounded by people that have encountered mental health issues, and my own personal mental health issues. I've absolutely had, both depression and anxiety, primarily more on the depressive side than anything. But it's so important, man, to be fully aware of mental health and its capabilities. This is something I actually said at the release show, but I don't think people really give depression enough credit for what it can do to someone. It can ruin a life as well as take a life. And I do think it's very, very important just to be on the lookout and love the people that are experiencing it. Even if you can't relate and you haven't been in their shoes, there's still a way to love someone and let them know that you're there. And there's that sounds a little cheesy, but like, it's just sad that, someone can get to that place and potentially make that decision. And it's a very real thing. It's a very, very real thing. And it happens all the time. And so, yeah, man, mental health is very important to pay attention to.
Yeah. And it's very scary when you you're somebody that's you're going through something and you feel like you don't have anybody to talk to. And then because they feel like they don't have anybody to talk to, they turn to substances, whether it be alcohol, drugs, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
And then that's how you get like the accidental overdoses and all that stuff. And it's like, all they had to know was, hey, I was person A, B, or C would have listened to you, but because they felt like nobody was going to listen, or they were going to be looked down upon for showing their emotions,
Yeah, absolutely, man. There's like, and this is easier for me to say than a lot of other people. So I don't want this to come off as like I have it figured out, or like I don't understand, because I know vulnerability is a very difficult thing. It's not easy to like to look someone dead in the eyes and tell them that you're not okay. Yeah. And it's not super, especially if you're in a place where you're, experiencing cannot speak, experiencing those, experiencing depression under the influence of a substance. Like, it's even harder, I think, from what I understand, to tell a loved one or to tell a friend that, like, hey, like, I can't do this. Like, I'm in a bad place. And the vulnerability is, it's a good thing. And there's like this weird stigma or something around like counseling. And this is the part that I was like, I don't want this to sound weird, because I grew up, my dad is a licensed professional counselor. He's had his own business for 18 years. Yeah. And so to my family and myself, it's easier for me to say the importance of vulnerability, or it's easier for me to get behind it. But like, I do think that in our world, when you say like you're going to see someone, or you're going to a counselor, or you're going to a therapist, or you need to talk to someone, it's almost like that's like a bad thing. But really, like, it shouldn't be. That's a good thing, man. Like, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and I think that stigma is starting to change a little bit.
It is. I would definitely agree.
Which is a good thing. Like, as I've started to see a lot of like big time personalities talk about the importance of mental health and going to see a therapist if it's needed. And so I'm really glad to see that stigma being lifted. Like, I mean, it's not being lifted fast enough, but at least it's a start.
I definitely think it's changing. I really do. And that's what's good, is it's a good thing for someone to come to the realization and humble themselves and realize that they can't do something on their own, and that they need assistance from someone else. And that's a thing worth celebrating in my mind. And yeah, I had to do that. I went to counseling for the very first time. I was the first kid in my own family to go to counseling, even with a dad as a counselor. Oh. And I had reason to, absolutely. And I still consider going back. I kind of go in waves, but it's nice talking to someone, I think sometimes there's this idea that counseling is like a workbook, or like something where they just like challenge you all the time. And sometimes it's honestly just a conversation. Yeah. And it's just a nice hour, 2 hours, whatever, just to talk to somebody and them give a very honest and loving approach to your situation and just hang with you. I don't know. It's different. It's different for every counselor, but and
depending on what the situation is. But, it's just one of those things where I've kind of become this firm believer, and this is something that has slowly been marinating in my head for, say, like the last year and a half or so. And I've really started kind of putting my thoughts together on this. But I'm starting to become a firm believer that all musicians should see a therapist at least semi-regularly. Mm-hmm. Because, it can't be easy on your emotions to make yourself so emotionally vulnerable and open on a nightly basis, playing shows, and then have to take criticism because maybe you're a female artist and you're feeling bloated and somebody said something, or you hit a flat note and somebody criticized you for it, and just so you're making yourself emotionally vulnerable because you had a song about a friend that killed himself and it really touches you in that way. And then on top of that, you hit a flat note or you hit the wrong note or something, and somebody catches it, points it out. And so then they're just kind of doubling down on emotions that are already there. And I'm starting to see that I think musicians should regularly or semi-regularly go see a therapist.
Yeah. I would definitely agree. Like, and I think the point about the vulnerability, kind of what you're saying, like when you're a musician, you are creating an art for other people. And so you're opening up that passage, and that, potential to receive damaging whatever, feedback, especially in a world like we live in now where social media is such a freaking buzzkill to your self-esteem. I definitely think that, like, musicians hopefully in the coming years begin to see the importance of talking to people and stuff like that, because it is true that they have a career path that requires them to display the deepest parts of their heart and their creative process and stuff like that.
Yeah, perfectly well said.
Yeah.
But I don't want to occupy too much more of your time, because I know you probably got a bunch of stuff going on, busy day. You're probably working tomorrow, I take it?
I'm actually not working tomorrow. I have Sundays and Mondays off.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's the one thing I've noticed in Nashville, and maybe you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. Is it a lot of independent musicians, they tend to work weekends and then do their shows during the week? Is that kind of how the...
I'm not really sure. I think it changes. I think I'm more like touring musician, because there's kind of like stages to your musical career here. There's like that first stage, you're working full time. Second stage, you're working, but you're playing out more, potentially picked up a gig where you're traveling more. I think it probably depends on what you're doing, whether you are the artist or you are the hired gun, is what they call it.
Yeah.
Referring to just a musician that kind of plays for pay.
Yeah.
And then there's always like full-time gigging.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, that's kind of what I was getting at, because the couple of times that I've talked to people, they've told me it's easier to book, like, especially when it comes to our live sessions, it's easier to book them on Mondays and Tuesdays, because they probably have a show later that night and they're not working their regular 9 to 5 or whatever supports their habits.
Yeah.
Because on the weekends, that's when all the national touring acts or the regional touring acts or the bigger name acts come in on the weekends. So there's not as many open gigs for them to play.
Yeah, definitely. I think I forget, Tuesdays maybe, or Wednesdays or something like that. There's like a specific day of the week that like is known for being more of an off day for musicians.
Okay. And for specifically in Nashville, or?
I think it's just in general with the touring cycle. I don't really know if that's true. I thought I heard that one time that like Tuesdays or something are relatively more, like the off day for me, like a touring musician. I don't actually know if that's true, but I did hear that.
Awesome. I guess that makes sense, because even touring acts, they should have an off day, and there's got to be like a specific day where it's like, okay, there's no point in booking this show,
Yeah.
But what's one thing you want people to know about you as a musician?
Wow, so many things I could say. I guess that my first instinct to that question is always go in the self-depreciating humor way, because I tend to I have a humor that's dark, and I hate on myself a lot. Maybe perhaps that's my own insecurity. Probably is, to be fully honest. But one thing I would like people to know about me as a musician, that, oh gosh, that's a hard question. That I'm gonna probably have at least attempt to have my hands in a lot of different areas of music. And meaning I made this record, it's pretty much the same sound, but I wouldn't be surprised if in the next year I drop something acoustic, or I work with another artist that's completely out of my genre, only because I want to, and I want to have the experience of working with other people and making different kinds of music than sticking in the same one. So yeah, I would just say Probably that.
That works.
Yeah.
As far going back to the album that you just released, did you go into an actual studio, or was that more like a DIY?
Yeah. Yeah, we did. There's a studio in Jolton, Tennessee that we recorded that at.
Nice. And how did you get introduced to them, and how was that experience for you?
So that was run, it's not there anymore because he moved, but that was run by a guy named Adam, and he did our singles, at least the tracking part. And so that just through knowing him, that was how we did it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then what's kind of your upcoming show schedule looking like?
Well, we had a show for early March. It got canceled. So currently on the book, there's nothing. I'm working on that right now, but, I have some more content coming out in the coming weeks. We got a video coming out. And then
is it a music video, or what kind of?
It's like an acoustic live take video that we did at the release show.
Okay.
From one of the songs from the album. Nice. It's called Hotel Bandit, and that'll be out soon. And then there's some other, like we jumped into a studio last year that was really, really beautiful. It was a really nice studio, and we did like a single there for like a live take day session kind of a thing. So we'll probably get that out here soon. And yeah, just a couple different content pieces right now.
Nice. And what's your